Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Wild Burrow podcast. This week we are going to start focusing on action and taking action on all of the different concepts I've been talking about. We've talked a lot about love and God and spirituality and these intangible things that, if you really stop and think about it, it's really what makes the world go round. It's kind of what MLK was saying, like when he said, you think you see me, but you only see my body, and you can't see the part of me that makes me me. So that's really what gives people their personalities and makes life really interesting is these things that we can never see or touch or notice with any of our senses, but we all know it's there. And so this is where my New Year's challenge comes in is I have this little project for you all to complete, and it's just a very clear, simple, concrete action for you all to take, and it's putting these ideas into action. And when you put these spiritual ideas into action and bring those spiritual ideas into the physical world, that's when the real magic happens. And that's why I'm going to talk about Satyagraha today and this movement that Gandhi started in South Africa in the early 1900s. And Satyagraha basically means like soul force or love force, and just again acting on that love and that spirit. So we're going to talk a lot about that, and then I'm going to encourage you all to take some small action this week, and I'm going to give you some options, and they're going to range from very, very easy to more challenging or involved, but so you can find something that's appropriate for you to work on this week, and they're very simple and easy, so it's definitely doable. So I'm going to get to that later in the show, but first we have some good news. So the subreddit, which I'm going to talk more about at the end of the show, it's growing in size. We've tripled in size, so we're up to 3 people total in there, and that's exciting. It's there's not a lot of people there yet, but just the fact that 2 other people joined me in there is really cool to see. So thank you for those who joined. And Ibex3838, this is a Reddit username of somebody. I have to give you a shout out. You wrote a comment on the MLK, the happy birthday song that I posted. So this Reddit user wished MLK a happy birthday on the subreddit, and you are the first person to write a comment on the subreddit. That's not me. So that was awesome to see, and I was really happy to see that. So thanks for breaking the ice, whoever you are out there, and I hope you're listening, and I hope you're ready for some more. I'm going to read some passages next from this book called Satyagraha in South Africa, which was written by Gandhi. And it's about this protest movement that started in the early 1900s in South Africa within the Indian community living there. And the background to this was the British government passed this really draconian law to require all Indians living in South Africa to register with the government and give their fingerprints, and they'd have to carry papers with them all the time. And it basically would have made them second class citizens, and they could have been deported really at any time. And so this was like an existential threat for the Indians living there, which was thousands of people. And Gandhi was a lawyer and had been involved in some issues like this. So he had helped organize a big meeting, which I think was attended by almost 1,000 people. And at that meeting, the people in attendance basically took an oath before God that they would not submit to this law that was passed. And that was really the start of this movement. And the next thing they did was actually come up with a name for the movement that had started. And so I'm going to read you how this name came about. And so these are Gandhi's words. None of us knew what name to give to our movement. I then used the term passive resistance in describing it. I did not quite understand the implications of passive resistance as I called it. I only knew that some new principle had come into being. As the struggle advanced, the phrase passive resistance gave rise to confusion, and it appeared shameful to permit this great struggle to be known only by an English name. Again, that foreign phrase could hardly pass as current coin among the community. A small prize was therefore announced in Indian Opinion, which that was a newspaper in the Indian community, to be awarded to the reader who invented the best designation for our struggle. We thus received a number of suggestions. The meaning of the struggle had been then fully discussed in Indian opinion, and the competitors for the prize had fairly sufficient material to serve as a basis for their exploration. Sri Maganlal Gandhi was one of the competitors, and he suggested the word Satyagraha, meaning firmness in a good cause. I liked the word, but it did not fully represent the whole idea. I wished it to connote. I therefore corrected it to Satyagraha. Truth, Satya, implies love, and firmness, Agraha, engenders and therefore serves as a synonym for force. I thus began to call the Indian movement Satyagraha, that is to say, the force which is born of truth and love, or nonviolence, and gave up the use of the phrase passive resistance in connection with it, so much so that even in English writing we often avoided it and used instead the word Satyagraha itself, or some other equivalent English phrase. This then was the genesis of the movement which came to be known as Satyagraha, and of the word used as a designation for it. And he then goes into the more details about the difference between this term passive resistance and Satyagraha, but I really like that. The first time I read this, I just really like this idea of like soul. He calls it later soul force or love force, and it just implies this idea of like acting out of love, like again, bringing these spiritual and tangible ideas into the physical world and taking concrete actions on that. And the results were incredible. I mean, this whole struggle that they detail in the book, which I recommend reading if you have the time. It's like a short book. It I mean, these people really struggled for disobeying this law, and a lot of people were sent to jail and separated from their families and given like hard labor. I don't know, I can't remember if anybody died or not, but they really did suffer for disobeying this. But just by acting on these pure motives of like respecting their own self-worth and dignity, they eventually inspired all these other people and movements to join them, and that's what ultimately they did ultimately succeed in getting this law overturned. So again, it just shows you the power of this idea. Like they didn't do this with money, which Gandhi actually is going to talk about. They did it with by tapping into this inner power inside of everybody and acting on that. And so that's what again I want the theme of this episode to be is this action. And if you all listened to the previous episodes and liked like these ideas and liked reading about that, I want you to start to take actual action on that. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So I want to keep reading some quotes by Gandhi about this Satyagraha idea. Here's another quote where he's just talking about soul force versus like physical force. I can definitely assert that in planning the Indian movement, there never was the slightest thought given to the possibility or otherwise of offering armed resistance. Satyagraha is soul force, pure and simple, and whenever and to whatever extent there is room for the use of arms or physical force or brute force, there and to that extent is there so much less possibility for soul force. I think this is interesting because like some things you just can't get by brute force and physical force. Like you can have a huge army, but you can't force people to to love you. You can't force people to you can't win people's friendship with brute force. Like they might act like they like you, but they don't really like you. And so certain things in life you can only get by using this soul force and acting on this love, and that's gonna unlock that love in other people, and that's how you're gonna win that over. And that whole process is it's purifying for you, and it's also like it's inspiring to the person that you're going to reach out to when you do this New Year's challenge. Like they're going to be really touched by that. So it's just kind of like awakening this inner power we have and really acting on that instead of just these other things. Like I get it, we all have bills to pay and stuff, but like it's fine to have a job and devote a lot of your time to that and do what you need to get by. But personally, I made a decision to prioritize my own happiness in life, and whatever I needed to do, I did to support my lifestyle and support my goal, which was to be happy and to realize my true hopes and dreams in life. And we can all make those decisions, and we can start to move in that direction in little tiny ways. And that's what the New Year's challenge is for. Just a little tiny step. Just get a little taste of it and see what you think. So, um, again, I'm getting a little ahead. So I have all these highlights from the book I wanted to read you. So they start this struggle in South Africa, and a lot of people went to jail. Hundreds and hundreds of Indians went to jail, and it eventually, like, all these other people started getting caught up in the struggle, and then the British government was reacting again in really draconian ways, and they were passing other laws that were affecting other groups of people, and they were joining this the Satyagraha movement. So this next passage I'm going to read is Gandhi using this metaphor of the Satyagraha movement growing. The way it grew was like a river where other tributaries are flowing into it. So, and he talks about the Ganga River, which is I guess in English it's usually called the Ganges or the Ganges. I don't know what the right pronunciation is, but it's a huge river in India. So here's Gandhi talking. My experience has taught me that a law of progression applies to every righteous struggle. But in the case of Satyagraha, the law amounts to an axiom. As the Ganga advances, other streams flow into it, and hence at the mouth it grows so wide that neither bank is to be seen, and a person sailing upon the river cannot make out where the river ends and the sea begins. So also as a Satyagraha struggle progresses onward, many another element helps to swell its current, and there is a constant growth in the results to which it leads. This is really inevitable and is bound up with the first principles of Satyagraha. For in Satyagraha, the minimum is also the maximum, and as it is the irreducible minimum, there is no question of retreat, and the only movement possible is an advance. In other struggles, even when they are righteous, the demand is first pitched a little higher so as to admit of future reduction, and hence the law of progression does not apply to all of them without exception. But I must explain how the law of progression comes into play with when the minimum is also the maximum, as in Satyagraha. The Ganga does not leave its course in search of tributaries. Even so does the Satyagrahi not leave his path, which is sharp as the sword's edge. But as the tributaries spontaneously join the Ganga as it advances, so it is with the river that is Satyagraha. Seeing that the Immigration Act was included in the Satyagraha, so this was this new law that got passed that drew other people into the movement. Seeing that the Immigration Act was included in the Satyagraha, some Indians, ignorant of the principles of Satyagraha, insisted upon the whole mass of the anti-Indian legislation in the Transvaal, which that's a region in South Africa, being similarly treated. Others again suggested a mobilization of Indians all over South Africa and the offering of Satyagraha against all anti-Indian legislation in Natal, the Cape Colony, the Orange Free State, etc., while the Transvaal struggle was on. Both the suggestions involved a breach of principle. I distinctly said that it would be dishonest now, having seen the opportunity, to take up a position which was not in view when the Satyagraha was started. No matter how strong we were, the present struggle must close when the demands for it which was commenced were accepted. I am confident that if we had not adhered to this principle, instead of winning, we would not only have lost all along the line, but also forfeited the sympathy which had been enlisted in our favor. Um, so he's basically saying like once you decide on the right course of action for you, like stick to that, and these other opportunities might pop up along the way, but if you get distracted and take those up and lose your original mission, then you could lose everything. But in the context of this, I just thought that was a really cool metaphor how he says the Ganga does not leave its course in search of tributaries. So like I'm trying to start this movement and we're gonna need other people to join in, but honestly, I haven't even really advertised this thing at all. I'm just focusing on delivering the message that I have to share with everyone in a really high quality way, and hopefully that's resonating. And that's what's going to start this trickle is this metaphor that I'll use for this modern love movement that I'm trying to start. It's starting as a trickle right now. So like Ibex 3838 wrote the first comment on the subreddits. That's like a little trickle, and these trickles are going to start, and they're all going to just come together, and eventually, before you know it, like we're going to have a small stream, and then that gets bigger and bigger, and then maybe like eventually it's going to hit like a huge side tributary or something, and then it's like going to turn into this river where you can't even see one bank from the other side. Is how big the Ganga River is. So again, with the theme of this week being action, like I just want you all to focus on this one little tiny piece that you can do that's going to be easy for you to do. And we have this subreddit, this discussion forum to bring all these little side streams in together and create like a stronger flow that other people can see like this thing is happening. And So that's how this thing's going to grow. It's just all these actions, all these separate actions that everyone's going to take, and but taking them in conjunction with each other is going to create some momentum and create what I hope to be is a modern love movement. So I like that metaphor, which is why I read that for you. Let's see what else I had. So the the Satyagraha movement in South Africa, it got really interesting. They eventually, so many people were in jail that they had to figure out a way to support the families of all these men who were in jail, and eventually women even were getting sent to jail. So to do that, they actually they bought a farm that was over 1,000 acres, and all the families of the jailed people, all the Satyagrahis went and lived on this farm together, and they were publishing yeah, they were publishing the newspaper there and like setting the type and everything. Everyone had these little jobs and they were farming and like supporting themselves. There were all these fruit trees on this farm that they had gotten. So it's a really interesting story, which I recommend you reading if you have the time. But that sorry, I just I made some highlights and I'm seeing what else I wanted to share here. Um so yeah, so that all happened. They eventually had a huge march and like the thing that turned the tide in their favor was um, the movement got so big that eventually like laborers, workers everywhere just went on like a general strike, and that I think really ended up turning the tide in their favor. So they did end up winning their victory, and that was the birth of Satyagraha. So we might have never had MLK or the rest of what Gandhi accomplished if this hadn't happened. So I'll read one more quote. And Gandhi, in the conclusion, he says, "There is a law of nature that a thing can be retained by the same means by which it has been acquired. A thing acquired by violence can be retained by violence alone, while one acquired by truth can be retained only by truth." And that's the life I've been trying to build for myself is to try to find these truths about myself and the world and acquire things by acting on those. And that's what I want to encourage other people to look into. But so anyway, that's how that's Satyagraha in South Africa for you. I hope that was somewhat interesting. It was a little bit more disjointed maybe than I had hoped for, but the basic idea I wanted to get across was this idea of soul force or love force. And so next I'm going to talk about how you can start applying this. This last segment of the show, I want to talk about some actions that you all can start to take with this soul force that we're going to tap into. So specifically, I want you to take some action on the subreddit this week or maybe in the next 2 weeks. And I'm going to give you some different options there. But first, for those of you who are new to Reddit, I just want to walk you through the whole process from start to finish, what this is going to look like when you go and take action on the subreddit. Reddit, which is spelled Reddit for those who don't know. It's one of the most popular websites on the internet. I looked it up. It's in the top 20 worldwide, and it's a social media site. It is based around these different discussion forums, which are called subreddits. And I'm sure you've all used a discussion forum before, but there's a different discussion forum for like all these different topics. And I mean, anyone can create a subreddit or a discussion forum. So, for example, I am into skiing and there's a subreddit for skiing. So when you go on the skiing subreddit, people are posting pictures of going out skiing, or people are asking for different gear recommendations or what resorts they like to go to. And it's kind of just a free for all. You can post whatever you want. The I guess the unique feature that Reddit has is the community kind of decides which posts are more interesting or not. So when you go on Reddit, what you see is, so let's say you go on the Wildboro podcast subreddit, where you're going to see is a bunch of posts, and at the bottom of each post, there's an up arrow and there's a down arrow. And once you have a Reddit account, you can click the up or the down arrow, and basically that means if you liked the post or didn't like it. And really, it's supposed to be a sign of the quality of the post. So if you think it's not necessarily that you agreed with a person's opinion. It's more like this was a worthy contribution to the subreddit. So when you go on the skiing subreddit, you're going to see basically the most popular posts or the hot posts that are getting a lot of upvotes recently. And you can sort the post different ways. So you can look at like the most popular post of all time. So that's the post that has gotten the most upvotes of all time. And you can sort like most popular by the month or the day. By default, it's going to show you like the trending ones, like in the last couple of hours or that day, what's popular. And that that's kind of it in a nutshell. The other important thing about Reddit is that each subreddit has moderators and each subreddit has rules. So you get like a default set of rules just from Reddit, but certain subreddits might have specific rules. So like I also like coffee, and so there's a coffee subreddit and they have certain rules. Like you can't post photos of your coffee setup on the coffee subreddit. It's only for news. And the way that's enforced is there's moderators and they look at new posts, and if there's a post that breaks the rule, they will just take your post down. So that's kind of an important feature of the subreddit because the moderator has a lot of power to basically decide gets what sees the light of day and what doesn't. And you can see who the moderators are. So I'm the only one right now for this podcast, and eventually that's why I want this movement to get its own subreddit with like other moderators to more effectively manage this thing. But that's basically what Reddit is. And when okay, so yeah, just again walking you through this thing start to finish. So well, I'll talk about the different levels of action you can take this week. So the easiest one would be if you haven't visited the subreddit yet for this podcast, just open up the subreddit. Just click on the link. I'm going to put a link to it in the podcast description, and you can find it also on my Substack page. But it's reddit.com/r/wildboro podcast, all one word. So if you really just want to dip your toe in the water of taking action on these ideas I've been talking about, just open the subreddit in your web browser. And subreddits are public for everybody, so you don't need an account just to look at the content that's on there. So you can just click on the link and look at the stuff I've posted, and you can look at the comment that Ibex3838 wrote on the MLK video last week. So that's level one. You don't need an account or anything. All you have to do is click on a hyperlink, and is that's your soul force. You join the Satyagraha army by opening the subreddit for the week, and you should be proud. It's just taking action on these ideas. Taking that first step can be a big step. So that's level number one. If you've done that, or you feel like that's not a big deal, the next level would be to go on Reddit and create a Reddit account. And what that lets you do is join the subreddit. So when you go on the subreddit, yeah, you need to create a Reddit account to join it, which basically that'll new posts will like start showing up in your Reddit newsfeed if you join this community, and you can sign up for notifications if there's new posts and stuff. So that's what you get by joining it. And again, this is all free, and this is like I said, it's one of the most popular sites on the internet. So you might find the site useful in other ways, even if you're using it for other subreddits, not just for this podcast. So level one was just opening the link to the subreddit. Level two is going on Reddit and creating a Reddit account and joining the subreddit. So that could be your action for the whole week. Just join the subreddit, and that's it. At least you'll have an account. And if you're ready for level three, well, level three it gets basically into like interacting with the posts on the subreddit for this podcast. So level three would be like you have your account created, you join the subreddit, and now you can upvote or downvote a post that's on there. So clicking the up or the down arrow. I guess I'll call it the next level up would be level four. You can write a comment on a post. So I made a couple posts so far. I posted a couple songs that I thought were relevant, and you can write a comment on that. And the comments also get upvoted and downvoted. So you can also upvote or downvote comments that you think are good. So that's level four, and then level five. This is really getting to like the more meaningful thing, which I hope to start seeing people. I hope people will start doing this in the next week or two. So level five would be write a post about where you're at with the New Year's challenge. And again, I don't want you to rush to finish the New Year's challenge. There's no prize. There's a prize for doing a really quality job on it, which is just that it's going to be more meaningful for you, and it's going to be better for everyone else to read about. But you can start just writing where you're at with the New Year's challenge. Like just write a post. So you're going to see on the bottom of the subreddit, there's like a plus sign, and you click that, and you give your post a title, and then you can write something, and then you click post, and it'll get right on there immediately. I think everyone can at least start writing where they're at with this thing. Like even if you just write, hey, like I think the New Year's challenge is a good idea, and I'm thinking about doing this, or if you don't think it's a good idea, and you could be like, hey, like I'm not really on board with this. This is my issue with it, blah, blah, blah. But that'll at least start a discussion. And maybe there's certain things I overlooked. And this is why I want to involve you all in this podcast because I'm just one person. So you might have seen some other aspect of this or something I'm missing. But I need you to start telling me, telling me about these things, or else the future of the podcast will depend on some of you doing some of these things I'm talking about because I'm kind of out of ideas. At this point. The previous episodes were important for me to get out there, and those are all just ideas I wanted to say that didn't really involve anybody else. But so that part is kind of over at this point. And going forward, the podcast is really going to be made up of your thoughts and ideas and actions, and that's really where the magic's going to happen. And that um I maybe have enough material for like one more show, but after that, the podcast will be totally dependent on your activity. So that's why I'm encouraging you now to at least get on there and just say where you're at. Like, say if you're thinking about doing the New Year's challenge, maybe talk about some different ideas you've had, some activities that you're doing, or just if you want some ideas, just ask. If you're just not sure where to start, like just write a question on the subreddit and I will answer it, and hopefully other people will be on there and can answer it. So just writing where you're at, I think that can be powerful for you just because that is a definite action that you're taking towards doing this, even if you're not really sure where to start or you're just brainstorming. That's still an action. And just putting that out there, it potentially could start a discussion on the subreddit, and that's gonna help other people do it. And so the point of the subreddit is to help each other finish the New Year's challenge. And so we're all here to support each other and give each other ideas and positive feedback. And I would like you all to start doing that. So that's level five. The final thing to write on the subreddit would be when you've completed the New Year's challenge, and maybe some of you have or will be in the near future. But again, there's no prize for finishing it first. To that point, though, this challenge might be harder or easier for some people. Like I happen to know some people who they're already doing this kind of thing. Like they're organizing activities, they're bringing people together and doing fun stuff together, sharing life with each other. If you're that kind of person, the whole New Year's challenge doesn't even seem like a big deal to you. You potentially could have a, I don't want to say like special, that everyone who finishes the New Year's challenge is doing a great thing. But if you're one of the first people to do it and write it on the subreddit, that really could break the ice for a lot of other people and really get the ball rolling on this. So if this is easy for you and you're just like, well, that's not even going to be hard for me to do something like the New Year's challenge, please still do it and write it on the subreddit because you could be the first person or the first couple of people to finish the New Year's challenge and write it on the subreddit and get your badge. And that I think is going to really help other people feel comfortable and just see that like this thing is actually happening. So if I'm talking to you, I still want your contribution onto the subreddit. So just to recap, I'm gonna give you the different levels, and maybe you just think like I'll do one level this week, and then the next week I will go to the next level and the next one. And so here's the levels again. So step one was just opening the subreddit. in your web browser. Step two was creating a Reddit account and joining the subreddit. Step three was like upvote or downvote a post or a comment that you like or don't like. Level, I guess I should be saying level. Level four was write a comment on a post. Level five, and this is really what I would like everyone to do in the next couple of weeks, is just write a post about where you're at with the New Year's challenge. If you're close to finishing, if you're only just starting to think about it, if you're not sure if you even want to do it, just write something on the subreddit saying where you're at, and that's going to be really really valuable for me and for you. So that's that. So the next podcast episode, I'm going to give it maybe a week or two and see what kind of activity you all are doing. And like I said, I maybe have some material that I can produce on my own, but from this point forward, the show's really going to depend on you starting to take action on these things. So yeah, the future is in your hands. And I have faith in you all. I know that you're going to do this. I know that these ideas are important to everyone, and I really feel like this is going to be a great thing. And I hope that this will be a good thing for you in your personal life. And I know that if we all do this and can combine our efforts together, this is going to be a great thing for our society. So get out there, start to make some noise on the subreddit. I'll talk to you in another week or two, and I will close with another quote from Martin Luther King. This was from one of the readings from last week, The Power of Nonviolence. And here is the quote. The attitude that the only way to ultimately change humanity and make for the society that we all long for is to keep love at the center of our lives.